Whoa. This one's wearing a head cap.
Directed by Tony Devlin, we are talking the Glenarma tapes, and this is a 2024 found footage movie from Ireland. The movie focuses on 4 film students who are going into the forest to try and catch 2 of their teachers who they think are having an affair, and want to kind of film them to kind of basically kind of stop them from getting any hassle at kind of college where they are studying. So these 4 students trek out to this Glenarma forest area, which is quite a large forest area apparently, to do just that. However, being armed with kind of like infrared cameras and stuff, they actually capture something different. In actual fact, they come across some type of ritualistic practice that involves hunting people and sort of pagan style rituals and things like this. They are discovered and their lives are in now danger. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. Okay, so what works in this movie's favour? Number one, I'm going to say I think it's actually quite well cast. We're meant to believe these are student age protagonists, and I think they've actually cast a pretty good like actors here who capture that kind of student feel. Like a couple of them have got the kind of like funky haircuts that you can't get really away with once you have a kind of a job and everything like that, and just their kind of their interplay and the way they are kind of depicted by these actors, I thought were quite, you know, authentic. And our main sort of character, this guy, he's the sort of the one we follow the most. He's the sort of the, I guess, kind of rough and tumble type, you know, hoodie type wearing guy who's just sort of comes from a bit of a broken home and things like this, getting into trouble, but still at his heart a pretty decent guy. You feel the genuine kind of friendship between these characters, and I gotta say I think the acting was solid. I think the characterization was good, and the casting as well here. I think they did capture it. The movie tries to do something a little different outside of the found footage genre, and I'm not going to go into too much here, but I still want to give you any spoilers. But it also has an element of kind of mockumentary to it, and so we have the bulk of the movie be the footage that is recovered apparently from this fateful night, but it's followed by, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes of mockumentary footage, which is at various points through the kind of after the fact, that kind of furthers the story. Still, you could arguably say somewhat kind of found footage in a way. You know, there's news reports, kind of a couple of interviews, things like this. Even we get a kind of police body cam footage and stuff of kind of at the finale, really. So it sort of is the bulk of a traditional found footage movie in many ways, and then it kind of has this kind of other element which tries to incorporate sort of these other styles into it, which kind of gives it's a little bit more of a unique flavour than a just straight found footage movie, I have to say. I think the idea of when we are out in this kind of forest, it's not necessarily anything particularly like supernatural, but you still get the feeling these are people who are these sort of cultists or whatever they are. They're sort of dangerous, and they are believing in some type of ritualistic sacrifice and things like that. So even though it's not ghosts or vampires or anything like that, there's still an element of horror and unknown to it as well, because you don't quite know what these people are, you know, are capable of, and they're kind of wearing these sort of cultist outfits and stuff. It gives it a somewhat of a kind of a sort of creepy vibe. So, you know, it was a fun movie in many ways because of that. Ultimately, it does follow that kind of found footage tropes and things like this. So it is very much for the most part, a typical found footage movie, but it sort of worked in the positives to that. I will also say as well, there is some pretty, there's a little bit of a mixed bag here, but there are decisions that characters make that actually seem quite smart when they get the idea that they might be under threat. They find kind of sharp sticks, and one of the guys says like to this girl, like, stick him in the neck and things like this, and they try and kind of find where they are using kind of stars and things like that. So there is some kind of decisions here that I do think, oh, do you know what, they as a bunch of characters here, they actually made some kind of like relatively smart decisions in the movie. They did make some not so quite smart decisions, like shouting and stuff when they're clearly being hunted, but it's a movie that needs to kind of have an element of danger, I suppose. But there are at least some basis for having some good decisions by the characters in the movie. What doesn't work, yes, as I've just said, there are some things here that you just think, why would you do that? So it kind of there's a mixed bag in regards to character decisions. The main problem I have with this movie is it's sometimes hard to see what's actually kind of going on. When we come across this kind of group of cultists and our group of protagonists decide to kind of try and run away, they kind of scatter, and then from then on it's really hard to see who you are actually meant to be following, and we're kind of running around the forest with our protagonist, the cultist, and I think there's like someone else who's like another victim, and it's like I can't tell who's who. I don't really know what's kind of happening, and you even are not sure when people end up getting killed who's actually kind of getting killed. So I found this movie to be quite hard to follow on a kind of a technical level, because it's just like very dark kind of, obviously, cinematography. It's in the night, it's just with kind of infrared cameras, and it's that kind of running around with the camera shaking all over the place, with just kind of like voices behind the camera, and because people are wearing like masks or it's dark, you can't really see who it is. So I found the kind of the middle section of this movie actually kind of quite hard to follow, and I didn't realise, is that who's actually died? There's a couple of people who have been killed. Couldn't tell if they were sort of like our protagonists or antagonists to a degree. So that to me is one of the dangers of a found footage movie. You've got to try and find ways around that to have your audience go on that journey with you. I guess you could arguably say, it's chaos. It could be a realistic depiction of what that event might be like, but as a piece of entertainment, when you're watching it, it's hard to kind of follow, because it does seem chaotic. However, as much as you might say that portion is realistic, there are elements here that aren't realistic. For example, our main character, at one point, he gets taken down, but we see him having kind of flashbacks to him and his sister. I think, well, this is meant to be a found footage movie, but we have little flashbacks of scenes with him and his sister. Well, that isn't found footage, is it? And even at the beginning and stuff, there's a little bit of like establishing shots and things like that. So I don't think it quite works in regards to the conceit of found footage, and it kind of wants to have its cake and eat it too. I guess you can get away with some of the kind of the mockumentary bit towards the end, that they might have a few more establishing shots and stuff, and it's not restricted quite to the found footage conceit. But even then, I question, how is this police footage got involved? I don't know. So there are some things here that with the actual found footage mechanics that to me don't quite make sense. I also think that this is an example of a movie where it doesn't quite know where to end. You think you're getting to it, and then there's another scene, and then there's another scene, and then there's another scene, and it almost says, was this all a film project? I wasn't quite sure where the movie wanted us to kind of end off. Was like, are we meant to have believed what we've seen was the actual things, or as these group of people are film students, is this meant to be like a film project? I wasn't quite sure how it was, how we were meant to take it. So I found this movie's narrative structure to be a bit kind of hard to follow. Maybe it's on purpose, I'm not entirely sure, but as a viewer, I found this movie to be well made in some respects and an enjoyable found footage movie, but it's sort of hard to follow, and not because of like plot points that you're not picking up, just the mechanics of how it all works. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.